Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Johngy or Else podcast, without which life would be incomplete and have little or no meaning. Joining us from Skokie, Illinois, is the man on the beat, from johngysbeat.com, Mr. Jonathan Barnabas Roblesky.
I had a feeling you're gonna go with something with an X, like an Alexander or Xavier,
I
Alexander.
tried Xavier, it didn't fly.
Well, there's other X's.
Sure. Well, I don't know. I looked up the name to see, like, because I thought, well, that sounds like something that could be your middle name. I could see
Barnabas?
you being a Barnabas. It's apparently it's of Hebrew origin. It means son of comfort, a companion of Saint Paul the Apostle. Barnabas accompanied the saint on his missions. So it's just like you accompanying me, the saint,
Wow.
on my mission.
Wow. Wow, you really had it. You really went around for that one.
I just think that it seemed appropriate, but I'm
Well,
wrong again, though.
being that you're not a saint and I'm not Hebrew, Barnabas.
Buddy, the name is Eric St. Vaughn, so you can't.
Eric St. Vaughn is dead.
You can't.
Long
No,
live Tommy Els.
Eric St. Vaughn lives in the hearts of many. So, how are you, sir?
Newer listeners don't even know who Eric St. Vaughn is. So
No,
it'll be like the whole thing for them.
They probably don't. But hey, Google it, and you might just be surprised to find out what you do. So
exactly.
So the other day I get a text from this guy, a photo of him after having snuck into Northwestern's. Was it Northwestern? What was it? He got into the yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he snuck into the broadcast booth and took a picture and was like, "Hey, wait a minute, what?" Like he was, doing a commentary or something like that. No, he got in there before the game, and before anyone had been in there, probably, the janitor left the door open or something, and this guy snuck in there. But he got a fake picture, sent it to me, and it was like, "Oh, that's great, buddy. Whatever does it for you." So I'm glad.
Wow, way to inflate my whole weekend.
Did you have a good time? I mean, you were clearly there, so I mean, I'm sure you at least watched the game.
Well, there was a lot of games because there were 4 teams and they played, a playoff system, and there was double elimination. Northwestern won their game, so they had the privilege of playing on Sunday, and the other team, Miami of Ohio, had to beat them twice to advance in the playoffs. And Northwestern fell behind, then they passed them, then they fell behind again, then they passed them, and then it came down to the 9th inning, bases loaded, or the 7th inning, I'm sorry, because it's softball. Bases loaded, bottom of the 7th, Miami has no outs, bases loaded.
Is the 7th inning the last inning in softball? Do they not go 9? They don't go 9. Why don't they go 9 innings?
They just hit 7.
That's ridiculous. There's no reason they couldn't go 2 more innings.
It's not a point of that. Why isn't it? There's no reason for MLB to go 2 extra innings.
I guess you're right. There's no, it is what it is. However many innings you do it in, I guess. Anyway, go ahead.
So bases loaded, no outs, and Northwestern's ace pitcher got out of the jam. The place erupted, and it was a standing rolling crowd of over 2,000 people at Sharon J. Drysdale Field in Evanston.
Man,
how
many people does that place hold? Do you think? If you like,
I believe it's approximately 2,000.
So it was a full crowd.
Oh, it was more than full because in the outfield they only have seats in like right field to center, kind of. The rest of it is there's another arena there. And so not only were all the stands filled, but there were people sitting along the fence in the outfield. So probably 2 or 3 deep there. So that's like another, I would guess, if I had to guess, I'd say there were probably about 2,300 people there yesterday.
Wow. That's great. That's a good crowd. Yeah.
mostly purple. You had a few because Miami's red. You had a few bits of red in the crowd, but it was obviously it's Northwestern's home.
Bound to happen. Sure,
Yeah.
get some people representing. That's okay. It's good to have
And
them
I,
there.
I interviewed a few of the players after the game, talked to the coaches, mingled
Yeah.
with some parents. It was a good
You,
time.
you
Now
mingled
they
with
go
some.
to
What do you mean?
Alabama.
Let's wait. Rewind a little bit. You
Okay.
mingled with some parents. What does that mean?
Well, some of the parents of the players. I was talking to them, getting little quotes from them about seeing their child playing on the big stage, advancing in the playoffs,
I
going.
guess you can relate to them because you're in the same age group. So I guess that's
Actually, most of them are younger than me.
uh that's
Well, I mean,
rough,
think about it. The players are like 18, 19. Their parents are like 40s
man. Yeah. Well, it's better that you didn't procreate anyway. So
that I know of. I could be some of the players could be my grandchildren. Thinking about it. 17,
well,
18 year olds,
it's a frightening thought for anyone in any endeavor if they
says
find
the
out
man
that
who has a
you are
cat
their.
and no children himself. So,
Yeah, well, cat's a hell of a lot easier to take care of,
oh,
much
definitely,
much cheaper,
definitely.
and
No sass.
even on her worst day, isn't as dramatic as a child could be. So,
You are correct. But it
uh,
was a good time. Northwestern now advances to the Super Regionals in
man,
Alabama. If they get past that, then they go to the College World Series of, I believe, it's 8 teams. They went there last year. They have a good team. I honestly don't think they have enough. Well, I really don't think they have enough to win the whole thing because Oklahoma is like 42-1 this year, and Northwestern is somewhere
so
like,
they're just a powerhouse. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just yeah. Well, it's the old David and Goliath story. You never know. Could be it's the Rey Mysterio Big Show lineup right there. It's you never know.
it
You
could
can
happen. And you get
cut him off at the knees, bring him down to your level, and then break him up. You never
Hey,
know.
Miami was not supposed to beat Kentucky in this region, and they did, which is why they faced Northwestern in the final game here. So you never know what might happen.
Well, that's damned exciting. Damned exciting.
It was good. And what have you been up to?
I bought some sunscreen today, which I'm not I'm not a big sunscreen guy, but the weather's starting to turn here, and I've talked about it before, but just to kind of refresh some people on the in Illinois here, if you are in the Chicago suburbs, uh there's something called the Illinois Prairie Path, and it's something I ride my bike on quite a bit. It's a gravel path, but it once was a railway that was centered. It's centered in Wheaton. It branches upward north to Elgin, south to Aurora, and east out to First First Avenue in Maywood of Chicago, which is out east.
Oh,
Right. So I've ridden to the end of all three branches of the Prairie Path, and I've lived fairly close to the Prairie Path throughout my life. And when I was a little kid, probably around 5, 6 years old, I was riding on the Prairie Path in Elmhurst, Illinois, and rode it a short way because your parents would only let you go so far and stuff like that,
you're on the
which
tricycle at this point.
no, man. I might have had training wheels, but I was not on a tricycle. I was
Teenage
past
years,
that.
training wheels.
Take it easy. Take it easy. I took my training wheels off when I was 24.
Yeah.
I was fairly confident at that point I could do it. So, but but yeah, so anyway, but the thing is the weather's turning around, and even though I tend to go earlier in the morning because it's cooler out, at like 7:30 in the morning, and if it's going to be like an 85-degree day, it's better to get out there early before it gets up there and everything. So, but regardless, the sun is still out, and I never used to burn. I've always had just like a really like beautiful tawny tan to myself, very just beautiful, a beautiful tan I used to get. But now I just turn red, And so and I'm getting up there in age. I'm not up there as high up as you are, obviously, but I mean, like, so I bought some, I decided, I was like, all right, I should put some sort of sunscreen on, I guess. Everybody's on my ass always about the sunscreen. So I got some today. So that was a big thing. The other big thing that happened this week was I have, for the first time, been thrown out of a Facebook group. If you can believe
This
it.
this wasn't a Golden Girls Facebook group, was it?
No, 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 because they understand fandom. Um, so
Let's
here's
hear it.
so here's what happened. Okay, so I stumbled somewhere in the last 6 months. I stumbled across this Facebook page for Babylon 5, and it was it was just like, I see some of the posts that they make and the memes and the comments and stuff like that, and it's like, it's a small community of people who have any appreciation for that show. So I saw it, and eventually I just started following it, and and I just watched it. I certainly had nothing to contribute to it by any means, but I was just observing and everything. But recently I picked up a t-shirt from tpublic.com, free endorsement right there. TeePublic does a lot of t-shirts by artists,
Yep.
but they don't use anything that's copyrighted, but they can use references to pop culture, whether it's music, TV shows, movies, any of that sort of stuff. And so I checked out their Babylon 5 section one day, and I found a few shirts that I actually liked. Now, I just got one to start, but I got it. And then I thought, wow, I actually have something I can contribute to this page, because the fans will definitely dig this shirt, right?
Of John.
So I post the photo of me in the shirt, plus the line and photograph of the part of the series where it's relevant, and post it up there. No commentary, nothing like that, just the photos, just leaving it as it is. And the next thing, I know, like, first off, like, a bunch of people loved it, and they were just like, that's a great shirt, where can I get that? That's awesome. So I posted the website and everything for it and everything. And um and then, like, within 24 hours, like, whoever the administrator of this thing was, and this is just some dude's site, this
Yeah.
is not like this is not like the WB, because they're
Right.
owned by Warner Brothers. This is not like a Warner Brothers official site or anything like that. And the administrator cuts me out of the thing because I am showing unlicensed merchandise
Saw that coming.
on there. And I'm just like, all right, find me a store or a official website by anybody involved with Babylon 5 where they're selling Babylon 5 merchandise anywhere. We're not taking away from anybody out there who's
Well,
trying
but
to make
I mean,
this.
aside from that, even why weren't you given a warning? Like delete the post. The guy would delete the post, give you the
Right.
warning.
Just say something, be like, hey, man, we're not real wild on people like wearing stuff that's not licensed or something. Yeah, of course. You could have just, taken it, real casual. But no, it was like a hard line, and it was like, you're out of here. Bang. I've
Wow.
never been thrown out of a, and like, I could care less. But I mean, I still just was like, wow, of all the things I could have gotten tossed out of, a Babylon 5 fan page. I just and like I said, everybody who was like fans and stuff who was on there, we're all loving it. They were all like, "That's a great shirt." But it was a phrase that was said on the show. That's it. No logos, no nothing
And
like
it's not
that.
exactly infringement.
No, it's just a phrase. I mean, like, yeah, it's like it's they know what they're doing. They're not looking to end up in court, being sued over
Right.
copyright infringement. They just, you find like a slogan or something from a TV show or a movie or something like that. You find an artistic way to deliver it. And, so like one of the shirts, because these actually make really great gifts, and you got to wait for them to go on sale because they generally are like $22 a piece, but if you wait about once a month they get down to $16. And so I got my brother's favorite movie in the world is Airplane, and so I went on there and looked for Airplane shirts, and uh I found a t-shirt that said it was just like a real like kind of vague 70s graphic of a plane going down in the mountains, and it said you'll never get over uh Macho Grande. And if you know the movie, you know what that means. So it's a really deep cut,
Yeah.
but it's like it's one of those things where like if you're ever like in the grocery store and somebody sees that and they're like, that's a great shirt, then you got someone who's like a real true fan, you know. So that's what I like about these shirts and everything. But yeah, so I got this one shirt, no big deal. Here's what it said. It said, went to Zahadum, didn't die. That's it. Do you know what that means?
I have no. I assume Zahadum is a place and within the Babylon 5 universe.
Right. And
You
and
went
and
there, you didn't die.
I went there, I didn't die. I mean, like to the
It
average
seems pretty
person, it means
innocuous.
nothing at all. And yeah, it's like and like look, hey, if Warner Brothers wants to make these t-shirts and sell them, then I'll buy them from them. But, anyway.
I once got in trouble similar way before the internet. I was wearing. I was at a mall. I bought a shirt, Kelvin and Hobbes, the cartoon comic strip. Right. I don't know if you're
Right, right.
familiar.
Yeah. I was a
Like
fan.
Kelvin and
Yeah.
Hobbes shirt, just a big Kelvin face, And I was wearing it sometime, and I forgot who it was, but some knucklehead like verbally starts attacking me, going, "Well, that's not a licensed product." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. Like it was in a store. I bought it. How do I know?" Well, the guy, whoever, Bill Watterson is the writer. He doesn't license any of his stuff. It's never out there. But I go, "Well, he's got books. I know that. Those are licensed. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you know." Well, you shouldn't be wearing that. You're promoting unlicensed. I'm like, have a nice day.
Right. Well, what do you say we bring our guest on the show?
I'm dying for it. I'd rather talk to him than you. He's interesting.
So let me tee this one up here a little bit for everybody here. So our guest today is a accomplished musician. Goes by the name of the Boundless. I've seen him perform live at least twice, I believe. At some of the shows that my brother has been a part of. We had him on our previous episode, Professor Click, and but Nick is an interesting person, and he's his performance style was something that really grabbed me. On the last episode we talked about how my brother was going to be playing a show with Nick the Boundless and Roybot and a couple others, and I believe it was Nevada Hardware, and I can't remember the DJ's name, but um really I was impressed. He was I believe he opened the main set up for everybody, and one of the things I was really impressed with just his he had these gloves, and a lot of this type of music is run through what they call controllers, which look like big squares with just a bunch of pads on them and stuff, and they've been pre-programmed with certain sounds or beats or loops or whatever the case is. Something my brother uses a lot, in conjunction with his other stuff. But what Nick had done is he came up with like he has these gloves where he's assigned all of these things to, so he can literally stand on stage and to the beat jump around, and he's like hitting certain fingers and things like that and stuff, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. So I delved a little bit more into his catalog and listened to more of his stuff, and I really like his style. It's again, it's electronic music. Uh, it's I mean, he goes all over the place, but one of my personal favorite albums I listened to of his, though, was a lot more laid back and esoteric. So um he's got a variety of styles, and he seems to collaborate with a lot of people too. So I want to ask him about some of that. And
I'm
yeah,
fascinated by the gloves that you're talking about. I can't wait to hear
yeah,
about
no,
that.
I mean, I I don't want to make too big of a deal about it, but
No, but it's just a great
it
concept.
was something that I was really intrigued with. I want to know, how that came to be and what have you. So um uh fortunately, he has been very gracious to accept our invitation to come on the show. So at this time, let's welcome to the show Nick Jones, aka the Boundless. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Nick Jones, aka the Boundless. Nick, how are you, sir?
Good, good.
Good to meet
Well,
you, man.
Hey, you too.
welcome to the John Jurels podcast. So I became aware of you years ago through my brother, our previous guest, Professor Click, and he was telling me about both you and another fellow who was going by the name of Roybot, and was very big fan of both of yours, and I think I've seen you perform at least twice now.
Okay.
And but most recently, you were a part of the big night where it was you and Roybot, and was it Nevada Hardware or
Yeah,
something?
that's actually my brother.
Oh, that's your brother,
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
Okay. So Nevada Hardware, and then my brother. So yeah,
yeah.
there you go. But I uh I was in there watching your set, and I have to say, I was particularly taken with it. I was very impressed with it. I was very intrigued with the gear you were using, which we'll get
Cool.
to in a little bit. And just, you're able to, because of what you're doing, you're able to be more involved in the show and just kind of literally dance and hang out on stage, while you're making music, and that's so awesome.
Yeah.
um but just to kind of, reel things back a little bit, at what age and how did you kind of start getting into doing this sort of music?
This kind of music, it was always adjacent in it. I taught myself the piano when I moved into this current apartment I'm still in here in Chicago, because I needed a piano in the dining room. And so I decided, like a digital piano, not a big
Yeah,
one on the second floor. That I don't want to have to crane it up.
right.
But yeah, so I just started teaching myself piano. My brother lived with me at the time, and he was like, their keyboard player had flaked. And so he said, "Hey, I'd love to get you in as a keyboard player." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I started teaching myself piano. I had musical training before. I played the tuba and other stuff in college and high school. But then actually, his meeting Roybot was one of the main pieces. Is that I work with him. I work at Loyola Chicago in IT. Now, at the time, I was working in the registration office. So more registration of records, still with computers though, like the
Yeah,
technical side, and just randomly talked to him and asked him. I think it was one of those weird larks where I was like, "Oh, I'm going to buy this piece of music gear," just making conversation. And then he ended up being an electronic musician. So shortly thereafter, we started collaborating in a project called Digital Gnosis. GNOSIS. That's a big project of him and I, and he's actually how we saw your brother perform
yeah,
um, at Reggie's. So anyway, that's how I got into it. Nick Libertor, Roy Bott, he basically showed me how to do electronic music a bit, and then I like to teach myself and learn as much as I can, and then get really cutting edge with what I do. So we were both worked on Digital Gnosis for a while, We still are working on it. We're doing a surround sound album in that. Actually, there's rear speakers here and like a
Oh, very cool.
yeah, like it's raised up a little bit because there's a center channel
Yeah.
in front of me. We're gonna try to do Atmos with that. That'll be coming out next year. Probably the stereo mix, and then we're gonna do Atmos mix. But anyway, yeah, it's a long, twisted story. So that's a very simple question. I'm just going. So
That's fine. And so as you one of the things I noticed, so I listened to quite a few of your albums, and I will say that the one I really have enjoyed lately was Drift
okay,
from
cool.
2018. It's a very I was trying to think of a good word to describe it, and I guess esoteric is maybe the best way I can
Okay.
wrap it up. It's like, you know, it's I like that it's got some ambience to it, but it also has some hard beats at the same time.
Yeah.
And I've actually been listening to that while I've been playing the re-release of the original 8-bit Final Fantasy. And
Nice.
it actually makes good background music
Oh,
to
cool.
that. So but one of the things I noticed is that you have done a lot of collaborations
Yeah.
with other people as well. And you know, I do know that you and Roybot and Professor Click all came together during the pandemic and did the KBR album or EP. And I'm curious to know, like, how does that work for you to collaborate with other people? You know, like who, like, just like, to narrow it down, let's talk about the KBR.
Okay.
Like, how does a song get started? Like, does one person kind of throw out the initial idea and then other people start kind of adding into it, or is it just little bits coming together? I'm always interested to know how collaborations work with people.
We kind of found our process. One of the projects I had, Digital Gnosis, again, has been 15 years, and Nick Libertor Roybot is in that. So I'd worked with him, performed live with him for 15 years. So he and I, when I collaborate with him, that's excellent. That's car alarm right there.
That's
it's
Chicago.
noise happening.
Yeah.
So when I collaborate with him, he kind of shows up here, and we just make a lot of noise and just go for it. Like,
Sure.
and it's just trying to keep up with all kinds of chaos. Like the car alarm is trying to do that with us right now.
Right. Yeah.
That's just because we're invoking the spirit of Digital Gnosis and Roybot. Anyway,
Right.
so I did that. Another project I've done is called DU, and actually worked with Professor Click and Roybot in that. That's
Okay.
that project. It's really buried on the internet. I've never really like pushed it, and I'm really kind of happy with that because it's like this kind of playground space. So it's a bunch of musicians, sound people that in different shows I made friends through it. In fact, that's how I got to know Professor Click more, as we made music in that project.
Sure.
And that one, really, the idea is that two musicians enter and one song leaves. It's like Thunderdome. You just kind of like show up, and that project is really to get yourself outside of your comfort zone, like going really experimental, or like, hey, I've never done a country song or something with even those elements. That
Right.
kind of do that. That's what, yeah. But with KBR, what's fascinating about it, it's normally, I mean, I was in a band. I like the band. It was fun for a while, but then I started writing more. It's easier to write with two people than it is with three. But that's why I think KBR is special. Primarily, one of the reasons it worked, all three of us really respect each other's sounds individually
Mm-hmm.
and work in three different kind of spaces.
Yeah, I noticed. I could tell that for sure. I mean, it's interesting because, like, when I listen to your music versus listening to the other two, you're absolutely right, and that's a good way of putting it. Is that just you guys all seem to have your own territory, but I can see how you can easily then start putting it together because nobody's stepping on each other's feet in that one.
Yeah.
You know.
I think for that, for KBR in particular, really it was just it was 5 songs. No, we did 6 songs.
Yeah.
One of them we started 10 years earlier. That's why it was called 10 years earlier. Literally was.
Mm.
It was a thing that Roybot had said. One of my first electronic shows, both Click and Roybot played on, and it was back in 2011. And then Roybot said, each of us just do 2 minutes and then hand it off, kind of like a big exquisite corpse. And we did 6 tracks like that. And one of the 6 was really good. And that was the one that was the final song 10 years earlier, which then 10 years later, after figuring out how to collaborate, we're like, what if now we know more what we're doing? Also, musically, 10 years is a lot of time to learn about making music.
Sure.
So that's where we built it up. But anyway, so that the KBR started as a do project, actually, just with Mike. I think he just texted me randomly. I hadn't talked to him for maybe years, and he was just like, "Hey man, what are you doing? Like, you want to make some meat?" I'm like, "Let's just use." They had this thing called Splice
Yeah.
that doesn't do this anymore, but where you could sync up um and basically I was like, well, yeah, so that's where Wolves of Babylon came out. I was like, I
Yeah.
just did little pieces. I gave them to him. We went back and forth. We're all using the same program too. That helps, and it
Right.
helps. Ableton Live is cross-platform.
Yeah.
So we all were using that and learning from each other. It was nice. We grew that way too.
So
We
you
went
just
from
keep sending each other different versions, make your own edits to it, send it back, see what they think. They, add their stuff and just keep
yeah,
mixing up the recipe until you come out with what tastes good.
yeah. It's a good way to put it. The other thing is that I write non-linearly. And so does Nick, I know too. And I think Mike does a bit sometimes too, where you're just kind of, the great thing about Ableton is instead of using it, just like taking it from where it's made to play live performance and then going, so it has little loops that you keep triggering and putting together. So you're kind of going with what you're just hearing and then you stitch that together.
Yeah.
So we were just even sharing the same template, the same album template, where we're like, okay, here's this song, now or here's the track, and he'd make a version of it. He'd add things to it. I'd add things to it. Then we brought Roybot in, and the good thing is also I think it helped that all 3 of us work in IT
Yeah.
because then we even made the joke. I'm like, we're going to implement this dance track, and we were just like, and it was a really good energy every time we collaborated because it really brought some things out that I would normally do.
Sure.
Um, like I felt like a license to go wilder, which was fun. I always wanted to, and so here I was like, I mean, we had a mutual love that I got to really lean into of ridiculous movies like Airplane and like
Yeah.
there's samples of Airplane in there.
Yeah.
Like when they're taking off, Beetlejuice is sampled. He says Showtime at one point. I
Yeah.
hope that if they come after us, we only have to say Beetlejuice 2 more
Well,
times.
these are all I know for a fact these are all my brother's like favorite movies too as well. But yeah, no, it's very cool because you guys just do seem to gel very well together, and I see how the collaboration seems to work for you. And the thing is that when you are in a collaborating situation like that, it's like you said, you are kind of given like a license to try things that you normally wouldn't do, because
Yeah.
you're trying to meet a specific goal, and sometimes the avenue to get there is going to mean doing something different than what you normally do.
Yeah.
So, and that's great because it makes you expand as an artist and it pushes you to try new things, and you hopefully you either stumble upon something great or you find out that you're not interested in doing that anymore. So
Is it
Yeah. I
hard
think
to, oh,
go ahead.
no, I was
No, go
gonna
ahead.
ask, is it hard to get agreement then with the 3 of you, like, this is now done, a finished product?
You just kind of vibe it and we just listen to it and we're like, all right, this is what it is. We're like, hey, it's where we've all written Roy Budd has done a project called Weekly Beats where he's written 150 songs total between the 3 years he's done it. I've written a ton of music. I think Mike's written a lot of music. So that we're not precious about a lot of it. We're like, okay, we kind of know at this point where you're just like chasing your tail and you're just chasing frequencies and things like that, where just to take a break. And when you have other people, it's easy. Like when I'm writing music alone, I sometimes can listen to a bass kick and I just hear the bass kick or I just hear something wrong. When you're with like, especially like I know, because again, digital gnosis a long time. I'll look at Nick and I'm like, are you hearing this? He's like, I don't hear anything there. I'm like, oh, you're right. There really is nothing there. You just, yeah. So it actually helps the process to have 2 people at least.
Other people's, perspective on things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the kind of nice thing also about, because I mentioned my brother also, and that we have a little imprint called Think Break Records. KBR is on that. There, if you go to thinkbreakrecords.com, that's a plug. That title again is thinkbreakrecords.com. Everything is free. It's really just a way for us to have a space on. So it's not just us in our bedrooms just throwing shit into the void. We're just like, oh, here you go. Here's Think Break, and there's a kind of sound that we know. I mean, I have my own solo project, which is the Nick_Jones project. That's another one of my music projects. I scored the Odyssey in there at Loyola, like the whole Odyssey. There's a score of that. Yeah. That's I think Nick Jones 26.bandcamp or Nick
that's
_Jones.
it's interesting you said that, because when I was listening to some of your music, and like I said, I was a big fan of Drift. I just felt like Drift sounded very much like a score almost in a lot of ways. So I was interested. I was wondering if you ever did anything where you scored something like that.
Yeah, I did a couple things. One was the odd again working at Loyola, they switched it all to Zoom, and so I was locked down. I'm like, well, here's my opportunity. I know the Odyssey right now. Let's do it. Let me do, because we're going to do a Zoom Odyssey, which I think without a score would have been really, really painful for 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know. So I was like, let me just score this. I had all the because of Digital Gnosis and other projects I'm doing, I have like pretty professional scoring instrumentation and tools that they use that I've just collected over the last 15 years doing this. So I was like, all right, let me just use what this stuff is intended for, not just put it with giant beats. So I did that. I just scored another short film, like a couple of them that were pretty good. One got in some festivals. I felt good about it. It was called, oh, I should know what the heck I scored. What the heck was it called? I'm gonna look it up. I have my website just so I knew this would happen. It was called They Grow Up So Fast, which was really kind of a post-apocalyptic Home Alone, which was funny. They wrote it before the pandemic, and then they decided they were like, oh, let's have some kind of disaster happen, and then they had a fake newspaper that said pandemic, and so I'm scoring something about the pandemic. But yeah, it was good. Anyway, scored a few things. A biggest score I did, actually really one of the craziest, with these gloves. Because of the gloves, I met some really, as you can imagine, cutting edge people who love doing technology.
Yeah.
So one was I still want to work with her again. She's a quantum physicist, and she's also ballerina with the Boston Ballet. She's actually going to be dancing there in Sleeping Beauty coming up.
Wow.
So with her, she also programs robots and like robot arms, like industrial robots. So she needed music. So I scored that. I like created a score using the gloves for her and another dancer to play, and then also a giant dance piece. And I went out to the Boston Ballet and did it there. And also Harvard flew me out. So I did it at Harvard for the beginning of their AI school. It was like what kicked it off. Like it was like,
wow, yeah. That's really cool.
Impressive.
So I wanted to get into this. So this is as good a time as any. So when I saw you play less than a month ago or whenever it was, you had the gloves. So what you've got. I mean, explain to the people what you've got. You've got these gloves that are sort of like controllers that you've assigned sounds and beats and loops or whatever to, or maybe I'm assuming too much.
No, that's sort of how it is. I think that's interesting to hear how you receive what it is. So that's
you explained it. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, it's basically back in 2012. I didn't do it then. I think it was that they were developing it long before then. There's an artist, Imogen Heap, you might be familiar with. I don't know her personally, but she does like there's that movie Garden State. There was that song Let Go at the end. There's another one, Hide and Seek. She did a lot of music. She always wanted it. She's really innovative in technology. She really wanted to make something where she could more interact and not just have to like, so especially as a singer, like I'm not a singer with it, but that's where it's kind of made for. Like she could grab the sound, do some reverb, do whatever else. So on a lark, I decided to just followed the company, and I just found their contact, and I was like, you guys need beta testers? And they
Yeah.
were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So then they sent me this program called it was during the pandemic, like right before the pandemic I did. Then the gloves kind of went. I mean, they were not inexpensive, but I'm glad I saved up for them and were able to do them because they were changing my whole perspective on music. But anyway, so I beta test. I was the first Windows tester for this program called Glover. So what it does is it's the gloves themselves don't make music. It's just controlling my workstation called Ableton Live. So it's coming in
Right.
there, and I can then assign it to do all kinds of things.
Right.
So like, and it learns your postures. So
Oh,
like,
really?
if I make a fist, it knows what that is, and it does uh like geometrical math. Basically, it's called quaternion geometry, I think, something like that. I'm not a mathematician, but it's
Yeah.
basically I push a button. There's a button on it too, so there is something analog button.
Yeah.
That's where it says if I'm here, I push a button and it says, "Hey, set forwards." So then everything is relation to that point. So this is now left, this is now right for each hand.
Okay.
So you do all that. So that's one of the things that it does. So I used it in the show that you saw.
Right.
The main thing I do is I beat repeat. I had a chaos pad as a little pad that you touch to like repeat the music.
Sure.
I translated that set now into Ableton and the gloves so that if I make a fist, it does a quarter note repeat. If I point, it does an eighth note. And if I do two finger point, it does 16th note.
That's nuts, man. Because
Wow.
you gotta keep all that in mind as far as like what the hand gestures are going to create, what beats and stuff. I mean, that's a lot to to me at least, that sounds like a lot to like keep track of while you're out there on stage in front of a live audience, man.
Yeah, and well for that it's like well those are the harder things that I did that I think it was funny was something that happened during the show. I'll tell you what I do, how I set it up, and then how it went wrong. So I set it up. Also, I love soloing and kind of because I have 8 different tracks. It's like here's the bass, here's the drums. I also had it so that if I point down with like two fingers like this, it
Mm.
will crossfade immediately to being just the melodies. And then if I open my hand up, it would go to like both things. For made a fist, it'd go just the bass. The other thing I did is if I pointed different directions, it would solo different tracks. So it was like one finger point to the right, my right hand to the right would be soloing the melodies. This would be soloing, yeah. So I just rehearse a lot. I think also I didn't mention, I probably should have mentioned my background before any of this music was theater. So I have a degree in acting.
Oh, okay.
That's obviously why I
Well,
work in IT now.
that makes a lot of
So
sense.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, my degrees in theater and acting and playwriting and directing, like that, I did all of that. So for me, it's translating that. It's like the gloves allow me to unify both worlds. What everything I've done, all the plays I've been in, and all of that stuff, then with the music. So I'm not just kind of. I
Yeah,
love doing. I mean,
it all culminates into this one thing for you there. Yeah.
yeah, and the fun thing with this is my third time ever playing with the gloves. The first time was last year, and then I played in Madison at University of
Mhm.
Wisconsin. They just had me out to the terrace, like their big like thing outside that people just drinking pitchers of beer. I had never played for an audience who really didn't care at all, but I
Yeah.
got them going in the end. That was definitely one of the most challenging
Well, I think
shows.
it's just, I mean, like, it didn't take much. Like, I went in and I started watching your set, and then just because I felt like there were people in the bar who were hanging out and kind of missing out on it, I actually went out and like grabbed a few people. And I was like, dude, you got to see this dude, man. I'm like, he's like playing this set with his gloves, man. And like, so a bunch of people ended up started going in there and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you guys are missing this. I'm like, this is, so it's like visually, it's very cool to see you
Cool.
doing that. You know, it's like it really does draw you in, and it's just fascinating to see and wonder like how the hell does he keep all of this straight? And you know, it's like you don't, you know, I'm a very casual observer. I know very little about any of this stuff, and you know, but I can look at it, and you know, I record music in more of a just, you know, guitar based traditional way type of
Yeah.
thing. So what you guys do is just beyond me. I can't even fathom trying to do it. And so to see you up there, controlling, and I know that you are controlling everything that's happening and everything up there. I'm just like, wow. I'm like, I feel like I've seen a lot, but I have not seen that. So I just was like, this is very cool, very cool. It's very, very special. So
Well, I think oh, go ahead.
No, you're up. You let me go first last time. Go ahead.
Okay. Now the thing that was funny that happened was that, so when we were doing sound check, I just, I want to be cognizant. We're all just laptop jockeys, and we all mix slightly different. The venues are getting better about mixing. Actually, they're not just like, just set it and forget it. Who cares? It's like, no,
right.
We all have radically different things coming out.
The sound was very good that night. I thought.
I felt so too. I'm glad, and I'm glad that we all checked it and dialed it in. So what I did was I was opening. So I was like, okay, well, here, Doug, if you want to go in, and and Mike, if you want to do your a line check. So we were all on the right-hand side of the stage. And I forgot to plug my laptop back in. So the funny thing is, song 3, so it didn't throw me completely, but I was still like, all right, we're just kind of hanging on for the rest of this set, because I was like in the zone, like it's all working, and then I'm like, oh no. So my laptop had the thing that said low battery warning, and I thought for a second, I'm like, am I gonna risk this? And it was like a nub, because it's serving out.
Yeah,
and I have it on high performance mode.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you've got so much running through it. Yeah.
Yeah. So so the funny thing was that I dived down to plug my laptop back in, and so it was randomly then beat repeating during the set, or different things would solo. So it almost looked like it was on fire, because I had to. Another thing I had is that I solo things, and if I flick my wrist, it unsolos everything. So I was constantly flicking my wrist to make it so that all the music comes back.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, like, back with the glove, you obviously played a lot of actual instruments, tuba, piano, you said. So does the glove at some point become like second nature to you? Almost like, when you're playing the piano, you got to know which keys and how long to hit them and what order and all that. Is it kind of the same concept at some point?
You can do the thing with them that's really crazy, I found, in using it. I'm glad. I mean, what's great about it is such a boutique company. They give you, for at least during the pandemic, also because where else were we going, they would have, and they're in London, and they would have weekly meetings where everyone would just talk about how they're using them, share ideas. I presented a couple times. I wrote a Max for Live, which is a program inside of Ableton Live. I wrote a program specifically for the gloves. The company is so small; they shared what I had done with their community. But anyway, one of the things I did do for this show, and I want to get further into, is that I played. It was Roy Bott's birthday, so I played Happy Birthday. I don't know if you saw that, Tommy.
Yeah.
Happy Birthday with the gloves.
Right.
So and use the instrument that we always use in Digital Gnosis. We always have this one specific oboe patch, because on this I have a Phantom X7 old school Roland keyboard, hardcore keyboard, and it was like the 6th or 7th patch. So we always use that. So anyway, I sampled that and played it live. But that was kind of hard. I figured out a way. They have like what they call a chord machine inside of it, so you can set the chords that you want to play. And so I can make a fist and forwards, and that's one chord, fist left is another. When I did the Harvard thing, that's what we had the dancers do. And it was interesting because they're not musicians, and I had to show them like that they were dancers. So we were in this hybrid space where I'm like, go forwards for 3 counts, you just gotta go. Yeah. They did it.
Wow.
So it has a chord machine. It has a what they call the note matrix, which basically is like you basically, it's almost like you can set different notes in a keyboard and you run your hand across it. Sure. Like up and down. As a piano player and improviser, I think I can see where that's kind of cool and where that can be interesting, but I always hear the next improvisational note to happen, and then I can't go to that note because I'm locked. So I almost felt like I was cutting my hands off and had stumps that I was going across the keyboard. You
felt limited.
I felt limited. Yeah. That's a less disgusting way to say that.
Than cutting your hands off. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So what I wrote was a patch that made it so. Again, this is such a versatile program. This program called Glover. They still sell. They have all the you can't buy the gloves right now. There's like a 3,000 person waiting list. Oh, it's huge. I'm just throwing a number out there. It's a giant waiting list because supply chain and the world ended for a while.
Right.
So now they're designing new gloves with new parts and all that kind of stuff. And they also make sure it's all sustainable, and they have a big no sweatshop policy of like, that's why it's even more expensive, because
Sure, yeah,
they
but
make sure to do it
it's
right.
better that they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But it's so powerful. I was going to say is that, so I made it so that I could specifically say what notes I wanted to do. So I recreated the piano. So it's like if I move my thumb, that was like the middle C or the C.
Right.
And then I move my fingers and it would be like C to the G. And then if I went to the right, it was like, so it was C to G, and then it'd be F to, I got piano here, F to C. And then if I went down, it was G to D.
That's nuts.
So,
And like I said, it's the fact that, I mean, because you have to memorize all of that stuff and then play another song where all of these are assigned to different things, you know?
yeah.
I mean, it's like I just from a memory standpoint, I couldn't hang with that. There's no way. I mean, let alone you have to perform it, plus there's timing. I mean, just all of it. I mean, it's just I was very impressed with what I saw, and even more impressed to hear what goes in behind it and everything too.
But I crawl before I walk is a lot of my whole thing. I go into the workshop, and then finally, even when I did play the instruments live, it was when there's no other music going on. It's just me playing Happy Birthday, and the left hand wasn't chords, it was just drum beats.
But that's how you get better at it, and you figure it out, and you know, it's all just, you know, experimentation, and especially when you do it in front of a live audience, you know, it just, you know, it puts the pressure on, and it makes you have to really dig deep, and you know, but I mean, if what I saw was relatively one of the early performances of this, I mean, I was pretty impressed. So, I mean,
I'm glad to hear that, because again, it's encouraging to keep going and all that. But like,
oh, please, yeah, absolutely do, because I mean, like, you know, and then and again, like I said, it's the live performance is very, very impressive, but I do also really enjoy the recordings that you've done too. And
cool.
and again, you know, you're very versatile in the fact that I've seen you collaborated with, you know, several people at this point, and that's just, you know, I've I have never. I'm a semi musician myself on a very minor level, but done very little like creative collaborating with anybody else, and so just that process alone fascinates me. And like, you know, like how does it all break down and stuff? So I think it builds you as a better artist, though, because again, like you said, it kind of forces you into situations where you have to try new things that you might not have thought of before, and it's just based on circumstance, you know, and trying to adapt to what you're trying to create with the other person or persons involved.
Yeah. I think something with that is, I think that's why the next album I'm doing is actually just solo. I've not done a solo album since the Drift album in 2018. So that's the next thing I'm doing. I'm working on a solo album. I played one of the songs, the one where I chopped Macbeth's head off over and over again.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
That was yeah, I have, that's the other thing, John, is that I have video in sync the whole time.
Oh wow, cool.
So yeah, there's a program called Resolume that makes it so that I can ad hoc do little video clips, so I can still improvise, and I don't have to stay attached to like a timeline.
Right.
I can just still, the video can chop it up. It's like a VJ program.
Very cool.
Are you on YouTube anywhere? Is there anywhere anyone can see any of this stuff?
Sort of. I'm trying to get it all contained again. I think it's like that's the the thing for the last few years of just saying, how can I focus? The Boundless has a YouTube. I think really the Think Break Records YouTube is more what I would
Okay.
direct people to, because we're
Okay.
going to start releasing more videos. Roybot's got an awesome album coming out in Think Break. Nevada Hardware's got an awesome album coming out. He works a lot slower than I do, which is good. I mean, he's really
Sure. Whatever. However
ridiculous
you
and
got to
good,
do it.
however
Yeah.
long he works, but it's great. That's coming out. And then I'll probably either before my brother or after him shortly, I'll have an album. So we'll have, it's like this next layer of what Think Break is. We just kind of threw something out there
Nice.
as a collection. And then DJs in the, we're kind of in the goth industrial scene. We're kind of adjacent. We can be in all kinds of scenes. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
But that's kind of the scene that's embraced, and we embrace that. We love always the wax tracks music, the wax tracks scene.
You had a pretty, there was a pretty eclectic audience there at the show I was at. I mean, there was people of all different types there and stuff. So but I could see how you could appeal to all types, really. I mean, so well, we'll link all of that to this episode so people can check that out. Yeah,
cool.
John, you got anything else here?
No, the only thing I was going to say is, I came to the table much later than Tommy. But I have checked your stuff out on that Think Break site.
Okay.
And I freely admit, it's ordinarily not my type of music, but I really did enjoy your music. I thought it was really cool stuff. Like Tommy had said, he explained it much better than I am. But I thought it was really cool stuff. And unfortunately, I missed the show because it sounds like it was fantastic. But I hope to catch it sometime in the future.
Digital Gnosis is gonna play a show in September at Burlington. It's not announced. I know Burlington announced it finally. So we're playing with September 16th, and that's 2 pairs of gloves actually. One of the very last pairs before they stopped was actually Nick Libertor. Roybot has a pair of gloves. Yeah. So we're going to figure out how all of that works, and we might also use.
I think this is an excuse for John and I to go out to a show.
Yeah, definitely.
Plenty of time ahead.
Yeah. So
September 16th is a while. Yeah.
All right. So I mean, obviously I know where it is, and so we'll let's plan on going out to see that then, and we'll get to check that out, and then maybe get you back on the show and talk about it. And
it'd be cool to have Roybot on with me here because he lives down the street.
I agree. I would love it if we could have both of you
or
on.
Zoom. We don't have to be in the same room.
No, you don't have to be in the same place. No. Well, we are planning on talking to him as well. So, cool. And then if we can get both of you on at the same time, it'll be all the better. So,
double the fun.
Or even if we can maybe get all 3 of KBR on at some point. It's tough with the time zones, but we
can make it work. Yeah. We made it work for the whole thing. We figured it all out.
Well, it was an excellent night. I had a wonderful time. It was really great to see all of you guys perform, and it was just again, I was impressed, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show and get to talk to you. So, thank you for coming on. And is there anything? I mean, other than your website, anywhere else people should check you out online?
I'd say Think Break Records is right now for the bound list the best thing. I have a website actually. It's nickjonesnexus.com. I'm redesigning it right now. It's like a sprawling database of a bunch of art stuff I've done.
Sure.
But I'm trying to get its focus in because I'm really also focusing on my playwriting. There's a small group called Tuesdays at 9. Actually, tomorrow night they're reading a scene of mine. It's cold reading stuff, but so they show up and just read it. So there's a short scene that I wrote 20 years ago, but they're doing a little piece of it. So
jack of all trades, man. Wow. This guy does everything.
He's a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I realized about playwriting and music is they both involve time, and it's just how you manage how time unfolds. I mean, that sounds pretentious as hell, but it's really what it is. It's like how I could tell my plays that I wrote. I was a playwright before I was a musician. My plays I wrote before I was a musician were not as good. After I was a musician, I'm like, okay, now I get it. And when I hear the speech, I saw they read the same group, Tuesdays at 9, Chicago. They're Chicago dramatists on Aberdeen. And this is their last show of the season. They're going to start up again in September. But anyway, they read another one of my plays, and just hearing it out loud, I'm like, okay, I know music has helped me. And it's also helped me like for other plays and things. I'm like, when you're writing, the best thing to learn is that like you don't need to, once you finally hit a certain point, you're like, okay, I know I can write a beautiful string line. This song doesn't need a beautiful string line. So you know what to cut. You just cut those darlings and go from
Right.
there. That's what I've learned. And I've translated that to my plays even easier now. I'm just like, all right,
Right.
I just had something to prove here. You don't got to, and no one ever had anything to prove. And I think that's the big thing about creating is just like you feel you do, but you're like, you don't. You just gotta like just lay back, like just let the groove go and let the through line happen, let the story land, let it go where it needs to go.
That's awesome. Right on. Well, that's awesome to hear that it all is translated across platforms for you, and it's making you a better artist across the board. So
yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you again so much for coming on here and giving us your time. We appreciate it a lot. Everybody should definitely check out the Boundless. I know you're on Spotify. Are you on anywhere else where people can listen to you?
Apple Music, all the streamers.
All the streamers.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
And then thinkbreakrecords.com, of course. And coming up in September, keep an eye out for them. They'll be out there playing. And hopefully John and I will be out there in the audience as well. So
that'd be great. Yeah, September 16th at Burlington Bar.
Awesome.
We go on first, so probably us 9 o'clock or so.
Beautiful. All right, bro. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a real honor, and you are a great performer. You are a fantastic musician, and according to my brother, you are a wonderful friend. And I know he loves you very much and appreciates you.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on, and we'll hopefully catch up again soon. All right, bro?
Excellent.
All right.
Great talking to you, man.
Have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too.
Right. Take care.
Bye.
Nick Jones, everybody. The Boundless. His creativity knows no bounds.
I was just gonna say, you might say, yeah, there's no bounds to it.
Yeah, I mean, a playwright, an artist, a musician.
Thespian?
Yeah, I mean, he's hitting all the marks. No, very, very cool. I enjoyed, because I had heard some of his music over the years, just in small bits, but obviously in preparation for the interview and everything, I wanted to, really get more familiar with it and stuff, and really, really did end up enjoying a lot of what I heard. And like I said, I mean, not to put one above the rest of what he's done, but that album Drift honestly is something that I will be listening to a little bit more often now. And I mean, like I dig that. It's got a real cool soundscape to it. It's somewhat ambient, but yet still has some beat to it without being like overly bombastic, and I just find it to be really great. That's a good one to have a gummy and just kind of kick back and let that shit play in the background or something. I know you.
Well,
I told him about that, but
that's not exactly my usual taste in music. But in doing the research, and actually after you told me about him initially, I started looking him up, and I checked out a lot of the stuff on Think Break Records, and I really enjoyed his work. So like, and the cool thing is like that opens up, a different genre of music, I guess, for me, like, than I usually would.
Yeah, and I can see, a lot of like electronic music can get lumped in with one another and stuff, but it's like if you can listen to my brother, Professor Click.
And I love his stuff. It's on my
yeah, you've used the music before. It's our theme, or it's our theme music for the show, and our incidental music and everything. But while they're in the same genre, more or less, you can hear a distinct difference between the two of them.
Yes.
I found Nick's stuff to be a little more I don't know. It's good mood music, man. I just like I that's just stuff I can just put on. I could have that out at a party and just have that, and it just would be nice, chill. You know, I don't know. It just like I said, it sound like I told him it sounded very much like a score to something, and you know, I like that sound. And then again, I know I told you probably the day after I saw the show, I was like, dude, there was this guy and he had these gloves and he's
The
doing a
gloves
lot of this.
fascinate me.
I was like, the gloves are just like, I was blown away by it. And I literally, like I was telling him, like I was watching this, and unfortunately, like not too many people had moved into the room where the music was just yet, because he was one of the first guys going up. And I came back out and I got my buddy Rick and a few other people. And I was like, dude, you got to see this. You got to come in here and see this guy. He's got like the power gloves from Nintendo or something like that.
That's
I'm
what I keep
like,
thinking. Yeah.
I was like, they look like and he's up there and he's just like, he's moving. And yeah, he puts his arms out and he hits a thing and he puts out a finger and he does this and whatever. And it's just like, and you can see that like he's controlling all of this music. And again, like I said, the memorization, because just that one song, everything's assigned to a very specific part of how you
Right.
execute it. And then the
Yeah.
next one, he's got it set up like a piano, so now he's got to
See,
play
that
that
to me is the
differently.
crazy part. Like
Yeah.
memorizing, like doing one song. I get it. Like when you're playing a piano, you got to memorize the notes, you got to memorize the order and all that. So I could relate like one song to that. But the fact that the next song, all the stuff changes, and then
Right.
he's got to memorize that. Then like that's like memorizing 10 instruments a night.
Well, I mean, and to his credit, though, I mean, what he said is it comes down to practice, and that's like any band. I mean, it's playing it over and over and over again, so that that when by the time you got to get out there and do it, you know how to do it and everything. So it's not something he just willy nilly just goes out there and starts
No,
doing.
no,
He's got to
clearly.
actually rehearse and practice this and everything. So just I'm very impressed. I think you know me well enough to know that I am not easily
Well,
impressed by
clearly,
very
because
much.
somehow you've managed not to be impressed by me.
I've never been impressed by you.
But we can't agree that we're both impressed by him.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a personal note, my brother, I know, um he has always spoken very, very highly of him, and really considers him to be a really good friend. And anybody who's a good friend of my brother is in my cool book. So
I
uh
second that.
you know
We
uh
agree again.
yeah, well, this is some things are just undeniable, and even you and I can agree on it. So but again, thank you to Nick for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And we are going to reach out to Roybot as well for the trifecta, and talk to him if we can. So with that, I, of course, have been who else but Tommy else. And with me, as always, the man on the beat from JohnG'sBeat.com, Mr. John Rodweski.